Hello, everyone. My presentation is called Narco Politics and the Limit of U.S. Protection in Puerto Vallarta. My main research question is, if the U.S. helps Mexico with intelligence against cartel leaders, why are Americans in Puerto Vallarta still not fully protected from the violence that follows? I chose this topic because it connects to tourism, cartel violence, and the limits of safety when Americans travel outside the United States. My project is not just about crime. It's about how violence affects tourist cities, local workers, and people who think they are protected because they're just in a popular vacation area. This topic is personal to me because I was visiting Puerto Vallarta when the violence happened on February 22nd, 2026. What stood out to me was how fast the cartel was able to shut down access to the city and the highways. In about 2 hours, the situation changed completely. Roads were blocked, movement slowed down, and it felt like police and military forces were struggling to respond fast enough. Puerto Vallarta is usually seen as a safe vacation place, but in that moment, it did not feel fully separated from the violence. That made me question how safe tourist cities really are when cartel violence spreads. This also made me think about the difference between tourists and local people. Tourists can usually leave, but local workers and families have to stay. This topic matters because many Americans travel to Mexico every year. Places like Puerto Vallarta depend on tourism, and tourism depends on people feeling safe. When cartel violence reaches a tourist city, it affects more than just the people directly involved. It can affect the airports, hotels, restaurants, taxi drivers, workers, families, and the tourists. Another reason this matters because safety is not experienced the same way by everybody. A tourist might see the violence as a very scary moment on vacation, while a local worker might see this as something that threatens their job, income, and everyday life. This is why this topic connects to ethnic studies. It looks at power, nationality, class, and who gets protected. So I chose Puerto Vallarta because this is a major tourist city, and it's also located in Jalisco. Jalisco is important because it connects the Jalisco New Generation cartel, which is the most powerful cartel in Mexico, and the one I will be referencing in my research project. This makes Puerto Vallarta a strong place to study the conflict between tourism and cartel power. Puerto Vallarta is marketed as a safe and beautiful place for vacation, but my research looks at what happens when narco politics reaches a place that depends on the image of safety. It shows that tourist cities are not always separated from the larger drug war happening around them. For my research plan, I would use fieldwork in Puerto Vallarta. I would interview tourists and local workers like hotel employees, restaurant workers, taxi drivers, business owners, and people who depend on tourism. I'll ask them how the violence affected their work, travel, and the feeling of safety. I would also observe places like hotels, restaurants, beaches, taxis, and airport areas as well. I would take field notes about what people say, how businesses respond, and whether tourists and locals talk about safety differently. My research would be mostly qualitative because I want to understand the people's experiences and stories, but I would also use some quantitative data like crime and reports, tourism numbers, traveling warnings, and news reports. My hypothesis is that the U.S. protection has limits. The U.S. can help Mexico with intelligence and can help target cartels, but it cannot fully control what happens on the ground after violence begins. In other words, intelligence can help with an operation, but it does not automatically protect tourists, local workers, or residents that the chaos follows. For my budget, I estimated around $17,000 and 800. That would help for covering 2 months of fieldwork in Puerto Vallarta. This would include housing, travel, transportation, translation help, safety costs, and research help. Overall, my project argues that Puerto Vallarta shows the limits of U.S. protection. Even in a tourist city, people can be affected by the cartel violence. And more importantly, locals and tourists do not experience that danger in the same way.